Good news as Ben White potentially is closing in on a brand new contract, if not already. And the same can be said for another Arsenal player, whilst Victor Osimhen is being talked about in Arsenal transfer circles once again, as we look through all the latest in the Arsenal news show. Hello and welcome to the Ill Talk, the show in which you witness a man try and talk about Arsenal for at least 30 minutes whilst his body gradually falls apart. Well, good morning and hope you're doing good and well, much better than me. Oh, yeah. You think that you're going to wake up, you go to bed ill and you're like, right, okay, tomorrow, new day, better day. You're going to feel all right in the morning. And I just don't. My voice is a little bit better, but that's only I think I've scolded it with a T, so I can't feel pain anymore. My nose is like a tap at the moment. It's like, Crystal Palace trying to keep goals at the back of their net. And I apologize in advance because I'm one of those where I like people feeling sorry for me when I'm ill. And then, I just try to people going, "Oh, are you okay? Can I do anything for you?" And I'm on annual leave and the missus is at work, so I don't get that. So you will have to provide that for me. It's not warm at all in this house, and yet I'm sweating like I'm in a sauna. But that's enough about me moaning and me feeling sorry for myself. Good morning for you. Hope you're doing good. Hope you're doing well. Thank you so much, as always, for joining me. Damien, Rich, Glenn, Lee, Pasadena, Matt G, Steve, Rowan, Ismail, Blackshine, Amira, Stephen, Pika, Who, Kaiser, Stewart, Damien, Clincy, Taylor, Jackie, Martin, Colin, and plenty more of you guys and girls as well. I may mute myself at certain points throughout the show so I can do a life relieving sniff to just get everything back inside my head. So do watch out for that. But thank you so much for tuning in. Do drop a like on the video and subscribe to the channel if you're new. You see, there's the first one of the show. But let's jump into today's stories, shall we? We start with Luton Town suffering yet another comeback. Of course, Arsenal are the other side that recently came back from 3-1 down at Kenilworth Road, but this time they were 3-0 up away from home at Bournemouth before Dominic Solanke, Zabanyi, and Semenyo in particular, scoring what was an unbelievable couple of goals to give Bournemouth a very important 3 points and send Luton into a spiral of frustration as they blew that chance to gain 3 points. A really big result for them. And so hopefully one which will put them in a much better position, Bournemouth, to stay up. I like Bournemouth. I quite like a fair few of their players. I like Luton as well, and I do hope they both stay up. But yeah, very intriguing battle now at the bottom of the table. Meanwhile, the quarterfinals of the Champions League, we have seen it decided that Atletico Madrid and Borussia Dortmund will join Arsenal, Manchester City, PSG, Barcelona, Bayern Munich, and Real Madrid in the final 8 of the competition. Borussia Dortmund winning against PSV and Atletico Madrid winning on penalties against Inter to knock out what some people felt was one of the key favourites for the competition. Amazing stuff and a really intriguing last 8 with some of the best teams in the world, of which we are part of. The draw will take place tomorrow at 11 a.m. UK time. I'll be doing a live, I say that now, I'm aiming to do a live show in which we will be doing a kind of reaction to the draw in its full, and probably maybe, if I'm up to it, get some people on as well. Otherwise, I will have melted into a puddle of mess by that point. Ben White is said to have signed his brand new contract with the club. We've been expecting this news for quite some time now, and David Ornstein breaking the fact that it has indeed been signed. To my understanding, it's been kind of done for quite a while, and we're just kind of waiting now on a bit of a announcement. And the same can be said, of course, for Tomiyasu as well. It is expected, hopefully, to be announced next that he will be, after Ben White, the next player to have signed a contract with the club. So another really positive bit of news there. Into transfer stories, and according to the Telegraph, Arsenal are interested in Columbus Crew goalkeeper Patrick Schulte. The 23-year-old US men's team national player is apparently of interest to the club. Another American goalkeeper. Will Arsenal be looking to replace Aaron Ramsdale with yet another young potential stopper? Although Matt Turner actually was quite a lot older than Ramsdale. Is Schulte going to be the next potential player that comes in to replace him. I guess we'll have to follow this story through the summer and we'll see if it increases in its veracity and validity. And until that point, of course, we'll keep it at something of a distance. And then lastly, our headline story of the day is that Victor Osimhen and his representatives, but specifically his representatives, held talks with Edu last summer over a potential move. He signed a new contract with Napoli at the end of last year. But according to Charles Watts, this was a deal that Arsenal were very interested in, and certainly something which I personally feel is still quite unlikely. I can't see Arsenal paying the release clause that it would take to bring Osimhen to the club. It would take quite a lot, I think, to do. But stranger things have happened, so I guess there's always a chance, isn't there? Just quickly, I can see another people in the chat box. I don't like these comments, by the way. Reese Prince says, no Americans, please. Nav says, no thanks, not another Matt Turner 2.0. I appreciate your listenership, but my goodness me, I cannot stand these views. I really, really cannot stand the idea that we had an American goalkeeper. He wasn't that good. So that means we are now ruling out all American goalkeepers, or we're ruling out anyone for the MLS. I'm sorry, you have to measure players on their own merit, not to do with what nationality they are. It really does get under my skin. And I just wanted to highlight that point. What doesn't get under my skin, though, is the safety and security that NordVPN can provide you and yours with its fantastic technology, which prevents, of course, those pesky little trackers from getting involved in your web surfing abilities. Not only that, but you can get a discount off a 1 or a 2-year plan by going to nordvpn.com/Gooner. And there's also, as I've not been mentioning, if you're not happy with the service for whatever reason, you get a 30-day money-back guarantee as well. Lovely stuff. There's also the potential to win a Declan Rice signed shirt, although it's not. It's definitely not that. It's definitely not a Declan Rice signed shirt anymore. It is now, because that prize is gone. It is now a William Saliba signed shirt that you can indeed win. Let's get that up on the screen for you to enjoy. Yes, there it is. William Saliba signed shirt. Plenty of instant win prizes as well. Kieran Tierney signed and framed Arsenal shirt. Tony Adams, Steve Bold, a back four signed Arsenal shirt as well. Some amazing stuff for you guys to get involved with. All the details in the link in the description, as there is with the Nord offers as well. Brilliant. Right, let's go to part 2 and your questions right after this. Now, I am tempted to throw up the big slide that's like, just says Q&A on it. I'm not too keen on having like a camera that zooms in this much. Like, you don't need to see that. You really don't need to see that. So I was tempted to throw up the slide. I may do, which just has the big Q&A on it, so you don't have to look at my puffy face. But yes, thank you for listening. Please do drop a like on the video if you would be ever so kind. I can't promise we'll be going on too long into the second part of the show. I guess we'll see how long my body can survive for doing this. I tell you, a hat on, headphones on, it's not comfortable at all. So please do drop a like. Help us hit that 1K every single day. Nav says it's just my opinion in regards to the idea of signing another American player. I mean, I'd love to hear your reasoning beyond just the fact he's American, because that really doesn't sit well with me at all. And I really can't get my head around that. And like Reese, who said, no Americans, please, not good enough. And following that with all not good enough facts. Again, I'm going to go there. It just comes across as xenophobic. That specifically, saying all Americans are not good enough. It is what it is. So if you want to hold that, hold it. If you want to turn around and say all American goalkeepers are not good enough, and it's because they're American, that's just the truth. That is just the truth. You should measure players on their individual merit. And that is it. Any player, doesn't matter where they come from, doesn't matter what they look like, doesn't matter where in the world they grew up. It is about who they are as a player, individually. Simple as that. I can't stand it when people say, it's almost like, it's not xenophobic in terms of this term, but it's like when people say, I don't want any more players from Chelsea. Do you remember those days when they're like, no, no more Chelsea players? Again, like, we have benefited so much from Jorginho and we've benefited so much from Kai Havertz this season. You can't rule out a player because of anything other than their own ability. That is, and maybe some off-field stuff, sure. But the main thing is regarding who they are as a player. And so I speak, I'm sure, for a lot of American listeners that are often, and this goes for fans all around the world, by the way, not just American listeners, but how many people that are listening from abroad, how many times have you been targeted for living in a different country, for not being able to attend games? How many times have you been told that your opinion is not worth as much as somebody else's just because you live somewhere else in the world, that you're not a 10-minute drive from the Emirates? I find it so insulting. And I appreciate, as I said before, Reese and Nav, who have been listeners for the channel for a while, but it's not going to stop me from, in my view, calling out what I think is just really poor viewership. And if you want to hold your hands up and say, fair enough, that's cool. But I just can't, it really gets on my nerves when anybody ever just uses someone's nationality or where they're from as some kind of determining factor in whether you want a player or not, or whether someone's opinion counts or not. It really bugs me. Clinton says, Tom, the thing is that Turner is probably their best goalkeeper right now, and I look at how poor he is. So the chances that the goalkeeper is not going to be good enough is very low and might be another runner. And look, Clincy, if someone had come into the chat and said that off the bat and said, Matt Turner is currently the #1 American goalkeeper, and Arsenal are being linked with a player that currently cannot beat Matt Turner in that position, and that is the reason why I'm thinking he's not good enough, that's absolutely fine. I've got no issue with that at all. Not a single issue with that whatsoever. Because that's effective reasoning. It's like saying Arsenal going for a player that is in, let's say it's Brazilian, right? On the left wing. Gabriel Martinelli, Vinicius Jr. Let's say Arsenal are going to go and sign the third choice left winger, which I think is Galeno, ironically, at the moment for Porto, because I think he's replaced Martinelli. And someone's reasoning for not wanting them is because, well, if Martinelli is the starting or second starting left winger, it's really, really important. It's really, really important that that's the way forward. So, yeah, it's just not cool. It's just not cool. Anyway, let's scroll up and get some other questions. Jalali says, TC, I don't know about you, but the one team I do not want in the Champions League is Atletico Madrid. They will be even bigger, than Porto will be. I don't know, actually. They used to be. I feel like people are misconstruing somewhat Atletico Madrid. They aren't the side of old that were reaching the Champions League finals and stuff. And a few conversations with people yesterday actually about the idea of supporters who are ranking kind of Atleti and Inter Milan higher than Bayern Munich, higher even than Real Madrid. I had someone say to me yesterday or this morning. And that's really, I get the thinking and the idea that we don't suit those kind of industrious, tough tackling teams, but I think it's just Atletico's reputation more than anything. They are more of a football playing side. I think actually that Porto would be like a more trickier side to face compared to Atletico Madrid. I think I'd rather have played Atleti than Porto, believe it or not. But yeah, we'll see who we draw. It's going to be very interesting indeed. Jackie says, Tom, is Hine not good enough to be a second choice keeper? And we sign older goalkeepers as emergencies as well. I don't think that Carl Hine is quite there. I think that he will move on one day. I think I'd rather go for an older goalkeeper. I think personally, I think I'd look at someone with more experience, someone that can come in that Raya can sometimes look up to. If you bring in the younger keeper, I think that potentially there is scope that they're not going to get enough game time to develop as a younger goalkeeper. So I think it makes sense to go to something else instead. Nav said that's exactly what I freaking said. Let me scroll up and see if that's the case. Let's go to... Let's scroll up and see if I can find the message. I always give people a second chance to explain it. So let's see if that was it. The first message that I got was... I can't find it now. Why can't I find it? Nav, your first message was no thanks, don't want Matt Turner 2.0. That was the first message. So that's what I reacted to. Even as a second, he won't be levels was the second message. And then the next message was he's America's #1 after I'd responded. So you explained it afterwards. That's fine. right? So I can go and say, I don't think what you're saying is with that reasoning, that's not xenophobic. That's fine. But I think you can absolutely understand why when you first said, I don't want Matt Turner 2.0, it doesn't come across the same way when you lead with that. Nexus says, Tom, you said you can't see Arsenal paying the release clause for Osimhen. Why? If we paid over the odds for Rice, surely we can do the same thing. I'm not saying that we couldn't necessarily do it. I just don't think Arsenal will. I think we look at other players that are worth the price tag more, if that's the case. So yeah. Reese said, if I'm not mistaken, Turner was replaced by a better goalkeeper, supposedly in the MS All-Stars game, and he has shipped a healthy number of goals as well. Hey, look, Reese, if that's your reasoning for not wanting this Patrick Schulte, that's fine. But your first message is, I don't want any Americans. That's what you said first. So you got to hold that. You got to hold that, or hold your hands up and say, you know what, fair enough, I was wrong to say that. So it's not about, semantics. I'm just taking what you said at face value. Bulgarian Gunner says Stefan Ortega, who in the chat knew about him before the City move as well. I think it's a really good point. That said, Stefan Ortega is on the older side, so it would be one of those it'd be one of those more, what's the word I'm looking for? Experienced kind of figureheads rather than bringing in a younger goalkeeper. Izu says, Tom, name me 2 teams that you don't want to meet at the quarterfinals. Manchester City, and I just don't want Bayern for some reason. Maybe it's PTSD. I just don't want Bayern at all. Could not want anything to do with him. Let's go to Daryl says the goalkeeper talk show, TGT. Amira says so many fans, not you, were underestimating Porto. Meanwhile, last year's Champions League runners-up got knocked out. Why underestimate non-English teams if you're in the Champions League knockouts, if you're good enough? I think that any team we face is going to be a challenge. There were teams that we'd rather have than others. It's as simple as that. But yeah, it's difficult. It's difficult wherever you face. It's going to be a challenge, whatever you face. Let's go to Tabani says, Tom, I have been a Gooner since 1987. And I've been to a live game once, and I fully agree with what you're saying. I assume that's about kind of the devaluing of opinions, which, by the way, neither of Reese or Nav did that. But it's just that's where it sparks my mind. If we start saying things like "No Americans, please," it sparks my mind to go think of, well, if we're saying that, what's going to stop us from starting to say that about other nationalities? What's that going to start to stop us from saying about people's opinions just because they come from that nation? It's a snowball effect. It's a knock-on effect. It's really, you've got to be conscious. Mark says, Tom, we need to get Bayern, mate. I really hope we don't. I really, really don't want to get Bayern. Kyle says, Tom, people forget that a few years ago, Martinez wasn't Argentina's #1, yet he was their best keeper at the time. Turner can be #1 at the USA right now, but not maybe their best. For a long time, it's a fair point to say that Jordan Pickford, I don't think has been the best English #1 goalkeeper, to be fair. I'd argue that Aaron Ramsdale deserved to be starting over him. I'd argue that perhaps Nick Pope just deserved to be starting over him for England. And Southgate was very keen on sticking with Pickford. Now, I think right now, because Ramsdale's not starting, Nick Pope's injured, Jordan Pickford is the right choice. But perhaps that is a good example again, Kyle, of where just because a player isn't starting for their national side over someone else that you've not deemed good enough, and if that's the only information that you've got, if you've never watched this goalkeeper before, if you've never seen anything to do with them, if you've not got the data and you're only going off of where they rank in their national team, I mean, Ben White doesn't even get into the England national team, and look at him, perhaps you're right, Kyle. Yeah, that perhaps there is an argument that actually that, it's not an inference that can always work. Anne says, moving on, the England team will get announced today and Ben White will not be selected. Should we be demanding the reasons behind this? I mean, we can demand them. Doesn't mean you're going to get them. So, yeah, tricky. Very, very tricky. Anyway, I'm going to end the show there. I can feel my voice starting to fail me. So thank you so much for listening. Appreciate your time. Let us know your comments down below on the things we discussed today. We got a bit heavy, didn't we? It's only a short show. We got some really heavy topics. But thank you for listening. Let me know anything you think about. Always read through your comments and try and reply to as many of them as I can. Help us to 1K every single day. Really appreciate your time, as always. And stay safe, stay well, stay happy and respectful. And as always, up the Arsenal.